now, so just give me a second.
Yeah, sure, we'll do that.
Okay, yep, you're good to go.
Thank you. And while we're just getting ready, Belinda, if you want to shut your camera down and your mic, if it's your mic is off, shut your camera down, then you won't be centre stage for the meeting. Right, okay, good evening. I'm Councillor Steve Cremoyson. I am chair of the Kings Barton Forum, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting on Tuesday, the 12th of March. The time is 6:03. This meeting is being held virtually and in accordance with the council rules for virtual meetings. Councillors are reminded that although this meeting is being held remotely, they are regarded as being present in the meeting of the council, and they should observe the normal rules of behaviour. First of all, please can I ask everyone in this virtual meeting that your microphones remain muted and your camera is turned off whilst you're not addressing the meeting, as this will help to reduce background noise and avoid unintentional disturbances. And if members can ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or on silent, that would also be a help. This meeting is being live streamed from the council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. And subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out in our website. And members and officers, where appropriate, for each item, please indicate that you wish to speak or raise a point of order or an explanation by raising your hand and using the hand icon on your screen. And I'll then invite you to speak at the appropriate moment, and then each member will be invited to speak in turn. Therefore, I'd encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. Thank you. First up, Nancy, have we got any apologies for this evening?
No, I haven't received any apologies, Chair, for this evening.
Okay, no apologies, and neither have I through any other backdoor route. So, okay. And do we have any disclosures of interest from members and officers in relation to any of the matters that are due to be discussed? If you'd like to put your hand up. Now, who is that? It's got their hand up.
Councillor Porter, I think, and then Councillor Batho as well.
Councillor Porter and Councillor Batho. So starting with Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I have a personal, but it isn't a prejudicial interest. I'm a county councillor. I'm in this meeting as a city councillor, but there are obviously other items that the county council are going to report on at this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. And Councillor Batho?
Just to declare an interest in the item from Hampshire County Council on the bus strategy or bus situation as an employee of Stagecoach.
Yeah. And Councillor Warwick.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think I'm reporting in reverse to Councillor Porter. So I am a city councillor, but I'm here as a county councillor, and there's no prejudicial interest as far as I'm aware on the agenda, so thank you.
Yeah, I always think in this particular forum, actually part of its value is having county and city councillors in the forum together, and those joint roles are actually often very helpful. So anyway, we've done our duty there in declaring our interest.
Thank you.
Okay, and James and Jackie, if you'd like to take your hands down, unless you've got another point you want to make. Right, so moving on to Chairman's announcements. I should first acknowledge that perhaps the agenda would have been slightly more transparent as to exactly what we were going to be talking if the topics had been specified in the agenda rather than just noting the officers who would be attending. So item number 6 on the agenda, where it I think says Hampshire County Council officer update. We have 2 updates. The first will be from the County Council Highways team, represented by Joe Holmes, who I believe will be talking about the status on the specifications and so on regarding Winchester Avenue. Hopefully that's not scaring Jo because that wasn't on her list, but hopefully that is what we're going to be hearing about. And then second item from the County Council will be from the transport team, and that's Mike Griffin-Thorne, who will be giving us an update on the bus service, investigations and the service proposal status. On item 7, which is the Winchester City Council officers update, we should be having 3 items. One will be a discussion on the phase 2B planning application that went through recently, and the conditions, specifically about the conditions that were attached to the recreation area and what the plans are going forward, or at least maybe the plans to create a plan going forward regarding consultation with respect to that recreation area. I know some of the speakers, some of the members of the public who are here to speak will have a keen interest in that and will want to say a few words. Second item on the City Council officers update will be literally just an update on the occupations, and the third item is the S106 tracker document, which is back by popular demand and is attached to the Kings Barton site. Okay. Before we move on to public participation, we'll just cover off the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October. I can see a hand up. Councillor Porter, is that a hand raising a point of order?
Yes,
or?
thank you. Yes, it is. No, it's thank you. Although we haven't given apologies that Councillor Todd is struggling to get into the link, just to say he is on his way and we've sent him the link, so hopefully he'll be here soon. But just to say that he's not here yet and he should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much. So just returning back to the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 12th of October. I take it members have reviewed those minutes. Can I just check that we're all agreed? If you would like to open up your mics and say agreed, or put up your hand if you want to say something other than that.
Agreed.
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 Perfect. And I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'm taking that as no objections to that. Okay, moving on to public participation. So I think we have 5 in total, but 3 members of the public here. Daniel Jenkins, David Layton. Oh, and I'm sorry, I think it's Ed Spooner. It's not on my. That isn't changed on my notes. Ed Spooner. Would you like to just open up your cameras, as if you were in the room? Now, my understanding is you want to. I know you want to talk about the recreation area and make some points about that. Now, that item we're going to be covering in item 7. So here you have a choice. You can either, if you need to get going out of this meeting soon, you can speak now and have your say on that subject, and we will take up those points, or you can wait until just before we deal with that item and then have your say, and then we'll try and pick up the item. We'll pick it up while you're still with us at that point. I'm going to assume that you want to do the latter, unless you speak up now to say you want to have your say now and disappear. Is that okay with you, David, Daniel, and Edward?
Yeah, happy with the latter, Chair. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, me too.
Perfect. And if I just happen to forget when we get to that item, do interrupt. Open up your mic and say, "Hang on a minute, Chair, you've forgotten us." All right. Okay. Now, so the next public member of the public to speak, and I'm not sure it's quite the right word, but it's the right way of referring to the chair of Headbourne Worthy Parish Council. So today we've got, for the first time, Julian Hamblin. I think you're online. Just checking, make sure you are.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Julian.
Hello.
Julian is chair of Headbourne Worthy Parish Council, and I think your wing person, if I can use that phrase, is Belinda Baker, who is the Parish Council clerk, and will be available to answer any questions. We thought it would be a good idea that we have a report of some kind submitted to the forum by Headbourne Worthy Parish Council to basically just cover off how's it going, because the Parish Council is taking on responsibility for a number of amenities that have been coming through, including, you know, the playgrounds and other areas requiring maintenance. So and you know, there's ongoing discussions around things that are coming downstream. So we thought it'd be a good idea to have the Parish Council just come in and just talk about how's it going, you know, what's going well, what could be better, that sort of thing. So they've submitted a report. Julian, would you like to hit the highlights on it, if you like? Just point it out. Members should have had it and had a chance to read it, but they might just need a bit of memory jogging as to what the contents are.
Right. Okay.
So
obviously it would take rather a lot of time if I ran through it in any detail. So yeah, probably best for questions as well. But I think the top item on the report relates to the football pitches and the MUGA, the multiple use terrain, that's going to be in part in 1B. And there seem to be a number of issues that require addressing. But since this report was written, I think things have moved on a little bit. There are two areas I understand that, in fact, there may need to be some reference to certain planning consents by Carla, and I'm expecting Ian Curry can speak more to that in order for anything to progress of this nature. But also there seem to be different views from residents depending on whether they're going to be immediately impacted were it to be built, or whether they're a bit further away and can see some benefits without being impacted potentially by traffic, floodlights and so on. So our proposal is that there needs to be, aside from any planning issues, a wider consultation on this topic. Equally, and just very quickly, this morning I was copied an email from a resident who has pointed out that some of the details relating to the proposed surface, were they to be built, would need to be appropriate. They seem to have some expertise in the matter and say that polymeric is required, and that the pitch markings that are showing on the current plans are out of date. They're pre-2010 markings, so if they're to be usable for competitive sport, they would need to be brought to the modern marking standards. I think that's all I need to say on that for the moment. That's probably the major issue. The tenor of the rest of our report is that considerable cooperation and good working relationships being developed with Carla, and I think it's safe to say as well the Residents Association, so we can look forward to working more in harmony. And some of the meetings relating to open space planning are now going to be set in on a regular basis. We're making progress on the Winterbourne Meadows and the 1A playground, although there have been some conversations about the height of the bunds and the trees sitting on top, but I understand that's nothing we can do about that one way or the other. And then I think the rest of it, probably we're going to come on to bus transport and roads anyway. So the only other thing I would draw attention to is that the green fields and the orchard, where we've got Sparsholt students involved in trying to help with some design proposals, but also importantly for engagement of the community in Kings Barton. We are having a meet the councillors, that is the parish councillors, event on the 6th of June in the orchard. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Julian. That's excellent. I'm pleased to see the opening up of regular meetings between Headbourne Worthy Parish Council's committee and Carla. I think that's a useful way of providing a little bit of structure to keep that relationship working well in future. I'm going to open it up to questions from members for you, Julian. So members, have we got any particular questions for Julian in relation to anything that was in the report? I see Councillor Porter's going to get us started with your starter for 10.
Thank you. And it's really encouraging to see the way in which now the local people have got a voice by having the King's Barton Committee. I think that's made a real difference. So thank you very much to the Parish Council for setting that up. My question to you really is about the play areas. And I noticed that you've had some conversations with Carla, and that you're hoping to see that you will have more influence in those conversations later on. Are you having those meetings regularly on the site, or are you going to have those just online?
Well, I'll let Belinda speak to the detail,
right.
But there have been mainly on site, but also some dialogue through correspondence and other media.
So the King's Barton Residents Association obviously are having conversations with Carla as well. So how does that all work, that everybody will be in the same place on that?
Well, that's a very good question.
That's something we just work out as time goes on.
Well, Jackie, if I could just drop in, we're having the 1A playground. There are two different levels really. That the playground meetings we're having are about a handover, so that's really separate. They just got to tick the box to say that it's at the right level. And obviously for Greenfields Park, it's headborn worthy. So any problems there is the park, they come to us. But it's before the planning stage really that the KBRA and KBC need to be involved to make sure that it's the right thing. And to some extent that's fallen apart. That needs to be improved, I think, going forward. So hopefully the meetings with Carla that KBC have got will set that process up, and that the anything that the KBR wants to say can go through the funnel of the King's Barton Committee, and we can talk to Carla about it.
And so far it seems to be working really well. So let's hope that it continues in that vein. It'd be really
yes. And I think the only other thing to add is that Carla and KBRA have kindly invited me to attend their meetings when it's potentially useful to do so, although clearly most of what's discussed relate to residents' matters and not matters that are within the influence of the parish council. Simply in terms of communications, better communications, I think it's important that we do participate, or just at least listen and understand what other people are thinking about, even if it's not something we can directly do anything with.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Right. Nigel, I see your hand up. Now, that's strictly speaking, you're not actually a member. Members here are the councillors, but I'm just making that clear that I will make an exception just on this point for you to come in on this point. And I really appreciate there's some sensitivity on this. Do you open up your mic? Thanks, Nigel.
Yep, thanks, Chair. It was just under the public participation bit, I guess, but just responding to that. Yes, the more that we speak to Carla as a joined up team and as one voice, the better, I feel. I was just going to raise the point that as a member of KBC, I'm assuming that KBRA members will be joining those meetings with Carla as well.
Actually, Nigel, you've gone.
Right, Nigel's still there. He's just taking his camera down.
Actually, Carla asked for the meetings to be just with councillors and with the officer.
Okay, I'm surprised, but yeah, if that's what Carla's asked for.
So I'm going to jump in here and say I suspect that this is a developing relationship, and I think Carla and Headbourne Worthy Parish Council have not been having regular meetings in the past. And I think there's a little bit of work to be done to establish, if you like, to use a council phrase, terms of reference, but try and get on the same page as to what's in scope and what isn't in scope. And I think that relationship needs to develop. Ian and Ian Curry and Viv are here, and I'm sure they'll have a view on it. And I know that as the KBRA has a long-standing relationship with Carla, I think over time it may be that there'll be a bit more blurring and a bit more doing it together. But I think initially the parish council needs to. I can see why they would want to have that relationship initially. Let's just get on the same page about where we're coming from. Is that fair, Julian?
Yes, and obviously we will know what KBRA's concerns are as expressed through the KBC meetings, and we will represent them appropriately to the extent that they relate to parish council matters, because obviously KBRA has its own route through to Carla relating to other residents' concerns, and we can't muddle the two up.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. So we'll be doing the meetings separately and together on the points where we come together as KBC. That makes sense to me. Cool.
Yes.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks, Julian. Councillor Rutter, you want to chime in here?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that this has demonstrated perfectly why Hebborn Worthy Parish Council, and I am a parish councillor as well as a city councillor, has been asking for probably the past 5 years for an increase in its councillors, because we are conscious that with just 7 members, our councillors in Hebborn Worthy are very stretched, and we would very much welcome the ability to appoint more councillors. We've got the Kings Barton Committee, which welcomes non-councillor members as part of it, but there is only a point at which, you know, you really do need more parish councillors. So I'm just putting in that plea again. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Yes, yeah, I think we all, well, those of us on the council as councillors will understand the pressures it puts onto Hebborn Worthy Parish Council, who are working it really well. Okay, Nigel, I think that's a hand that you've left up rather than a new point. So if you'd like to take that down or come back in. So I think unless there's any further questions from members, I think Julian and Belinda, you are off the hook. I haven't seen, I mean, yeah, I think we'll just hold it at there, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll go offline for the moment.
Yeah. You're going to stay with us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Right. Now, let me just check where I'm at. Q&A. Right. Okay. So our next public contribution is from the KBRA. I presume it will be Mike Slynn coming online. Are you with us, Mike?
Hope so.
Yes, I can see you. And
Good.
Your tools of torture are above your head.
Yeah, I won't use them today.
Right.
Okay, Chair. Well, I'll try to keep it very short, because a lot of these items either have already been discussed, items on our report, or will be discussed when HDC staff speak. But just to say that the 2B local sports facilities is obviously a big issue, with residents concerned about the design and also how they're going to be managed, and bearing in mind that there are also sports facilities at Sir John Moore Barracks. Is there a plan that the City Council has as to the relative usage of the facilities at 2B and those at Sir John Moore Barracks after it's redeveloped, and how they will be managed? So that's a question for the City Council. We'll listen to what's said about the bus service. Clearly, from residents' point of view, we want one now, and we're very happy with the minibus service, and we would prefer if there was a service now along Andover Road, and when finally Winchester Avenue is completed, and we understand from Carla this won't be for another 18 months, then the bus service could be diverted to the centre of the developments. We've outstanding issue is the proposals we've made to the City Council and the County Council on pedestrian and cycle movement on Andover Road between Kings Barton and the city centre, and just to keep that on the agenda, please, for an answer on that. You know, we've had a response from the Secretary of State, and that's in our report and has been well circulated, but it really chimes in with the advice we've had about Sir John Moore Barracks, that that is going to be a material change and requires a reappraisal of the decision to downgrade Andover Road and remove traffic from it, with any change to the approach being set out with a new local plan. So we're hoping to have contact with WCC Planning to consider that really vital issue for residents. And on that issue, we have put a motion to the Hebburn Worthy Parish Council, which was accepted, which is basically to say, look, the Sir John Moore Barracks development should not really be given permission if Andover Road remains closed to traffic. That's a key issue for us. Section 106, I haven't seen the report. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Apparently it's one of the documents that's available, so no point in talking about that until we've looked at it, but there were some concern about that as well. With Carla and Anthem, we're getting on well with Anthem, who are the maintenance contractor, but there are concerns about the management issue because there are no residents on any management company, and we will be writing to Carla to try and correct this situation because there are certain matters that are just not going right and need attention, and we feel that residents can contribute to that along with input obviously from Carla. So I think that's about it really. We're working well with the parish council, and we see that's the good way forward to try and get all these issues that we have properly dealt with and considered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, Mike, thank you for that. Well, as you say, I'm hoping that item 1, 2 and 3 that you've raised will be covered off by the respective officers. Certainly the phase 2 planning will be covered off in the City Council officers section, and I believe the estate roads and Winchester Avenue will be, and the bus service will be covered off in the County Council sections. Now, Mike, I'm aware also of the correspondence between you and the County Council on the pedestrian and cycle movement on Andover Road. I think that needs to just be followed through. It's probably not the most urgent thing. Now, with respect to the Secretary of State, Andover Road, so items 5, 6 and 7 and 8, the situation. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We've responded in Kings Barton Forum meetings, and you and I have had some very, good detailed meetings, mostly in a coffee shop, of which there are other brands, and I think it's very clear that Carla have planning permission to execute a master plan which was agreed in 2012. You've done I'm really impressed at the tenacity and tenaciousness of your campaign to try and get that changed with respect to Andover Road. We have got clarity probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, if not more, on Winchester City Council's position. It doesn't have the power to unilaterally decide to change it. You had a decision that you through your petition, you were able to get the County Council to give a response last March, which said the plan is the plan, and that's what's going to go ahead. And the Secretary of State has responded to more or less say the same. Now, with respect to the Sir John Moore Barracks, and I will open this up to members to ask questions of you in a minute. With respect to Sir John Moore Barracks, that is at a pre-application stage at the moment. It's not a formal application. At some point, it may well come to be a formal application. At that point, the City Council planning team will evaluate it as a new planning application, assuming that Kings Barton is as it is in its master plan. So you can make your representations, as can anybody else at that point. This forum, the Kings Barton Forum, its terms of reference are basically set to for the members, the councillors, to play their role, encouraging, cajoling, whatever it takes within their respective council environments to get things done in line and to support the master plan as has been given permission. And Carla's job, and I'll speak for them here, and they may want to correct me later, but Carla's job and the representatives they have here is to execute that plan. So what you'll find is we will be, we will continue to work with Carla to make sure there is some coordination between the councils who have a role to play to get that master plan executed. It is not our specific role to within the forum to challenge that existing planning application. So, and I think you've done as a campaigner, I would say you've done a fabulous job in getting it all the way up to the Secretary of State and getting a decision there, a decision back. And this forum is not really the right forum for pursuing that any further. So it's your call how you use your time here, but that's certainly my position on it. And I'm going to now open the floor to members, councillors, to ask questions of you about any of the points that you've raised, and maybe some of them may want to ask me a question and challenge me on what I've just said. Any members want to ask questions? Okay, I'm not seeing a rush. We will certainly pick up the points you've raised that relate to the officers' reports, officers' discussions that are going to come through. So let's move on to, where are we? Excuse me a minute while I, right, there we go. We're on to item 6, which is the County Council officer update. And I believe we are going to start with Joe Holmes. So Joe, if you'd like to open up your camera. Are you with us?
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe. I'm just going to mess with. So, Joe, you've probably prepared some some words. I don't know if you have slides, but we're particularly interested in the highway side of things. So, what's happening with Winchester Avenue? How are your discussions, negotiations with Carla? At what point will you be able to set them free to go and build the new road, and also these peripheral, the other roads as well? So I'll hand the floor over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Chair. I just plan to give a sort of a brief overview, an update on the 278s and 38 submissions and the progress that we've got to date. The highways sort of items with regards to Winchester Avenue, it's quite complicated to put a status on the whole of Winchester Avenue because the way that it's being brought forward is via 38 agreements and 278 agreements that all form part of a larger sort of jigsaw puzzle, as it were. So there's several pieces to be put in place to allow the road as an entirety to be completed. So I was just planning on sort of doing a verbal update, if that's okay, from through the development, starting at the southern access, the temporary access that's currently in place at phase 1A. So the progress there, obviously the technical approval was complete for the temporary access. There has been snagging items there, and there's works drafted to be undertaken within March, so they may or may have not been completed or ongoing at the moment. So that was some resurfacing works to be undertaken there. Once those resurfacing works and the final sort of snagging is complete, that will allow for issuing of the completion certificate there. And in essence, that then stays in that way until the final layout at that location. So we've that takes us on to the final layout in that location at Stony Lane Junction, that southern side. That submission has just been sort of received with ourselves, so that is very much at the early stages of the process. But that design has come through and now sat with us, which is good news. That then takes us on to the phase 1A spine road, including the roundabout and the service roads. The technical approval there is basically very, very close to no comments outstanding. And the legal agreement that supports that is approximately 75% complete, I would suggest, maybe a little bit more. There's been quality audits there which are complete from Carla's side of things, and the next really focus for us is just on the legal side of things and finalising this legal agreements and the plans associated with that. But again, I think we're very close, and a lot of progress has been made in that in the last since I last spoke at the forum. That takes us on to phase 1A estate roads. Again, we're very close to achieving sort of no outstanding comments on phase 1A, with the engineer involved having no further comments, and it's just literally waiting for the reports to be approved, so we don't foresee any further comments on that, so it's potentially 99% there. The legal agreement side of things, we would put at probably again 50 to 75% complete, with quality audits in that location also complete, which is good progress. Again, the sort of next steps with us there are looking at the legal plans and making sure that they're updated to reflect everything that's been agreed, and we just got a few elements regarding ownership and maintenance of drainage assets. So again, that's sort of more on the detail side of things. That takes us to the temporary access at Manley Road, the phase 1B temporary access. Again, there's been completion of snagging works and resurfacing in that area, so that will allow for the completion certificate to be issued. Both the certificates of completion for the temporary accesses dedicate a bit of land, which then allows the highway to be connected through to the rest of the development. So it's quite a key thing that's linked to those temporary accesses and the way that those legal agreements were set up. So that will basically help feed into the 1B and the 1A. That takes us then to phase 1B Spine Road. That's got a sort of a status of no further comments on the technical approval side. And again, the legal agreements are about 75% complete in the drafting. And again, we've got the quality audits complete there. So this is quite a lot of progress made in the last few months. And then that takes us to the estate roads in 1B. Again, we've got no further comments now been issued on the sort of the tech approval side, and the legal agreements again are in a similar status. So we're trying to prioritise finalising a draft for the estate roads as a precedent agreement, and again with the spine roads. So once we've unlocked the two agreements, one of the estate road type and one of the spine road type for the 38s, that will then mean that the rest of the agreements follow in quite quick succession. So that's in a similar state as 1A. And then the phase 2A and the spine roads, estate roads, that at the moment has been put through in one submission, so there is definitely work there to split the spine road out and the estate roads, so there's a little bit more work to do there. Then we'll liaise with Carla on how they want to progress with that, but there is no further comments from a technical perspective. It's more now thrashing out the legal side. That one's behind on the legal side. And then phase 2B spine road, we don't yet have a technical submission. Obviously that's not long gone through the reserve matters sort of process, so that I believe that detail's being worked through. And then that takes us to the northern junction. And we've got the prelim design audit with us at the moment, so this will be done. This is a section 278 submission, because it ties in with the existing highway, and that will be done through a prelim technical approval followed by a detailed technical approval, and the prelim approval is about 70% of the way through. And the legal processes are just commencing on that, so the legal agreements will be sort of progressing in that way. I think basically, I don't know how Ian's going to sort of any updates that Ian's going to be providing or questions later or answers later. But from our perspective, we've been working closely with Ian from Carla and other officers from Carla. And overall, the progress in the last sort of few months has been very good. There's a programme set out that lays the path to getting the road open by the 6:50 trigger, which is, in my opinion, achievable, as long as we keep progressing in the same sort of vein as we're doing at the moment. So that's everything from me, unless there's any questions, Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joe. I've got a hand up from Ian, so I will invite Ian in, because I think, you know, I've heard you talk about the process behind the scenes. You know, it's, you know, really good to have that transparency. At one level, it's really good, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm slightly better at tuning into it now, having heard this sort of discussion 2 or 3 times. But when I put myself back in the shoes of ordinary people, all they want is to know is when the road's going to open. and so I'm going to, as Ian's jumped in here, I'm going to ask Ian, can you provide some colour to a question like that, and then I'll open up the floor, and anything else you want to add to what Joe's just said, and then I will open up the floor to members to ask questions.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I totally agree with everything that Joe said. The only thing, and the pedant that I am, is just that I do believe that we have submitted technical information on phase 2B, Winchester Avenue. I've got a note to say it was submitted on the portal, so I don't know whether, Joe, you could just check that for me, because I just want to make sure that you have got it. If you may not know that you have, but I'm being told that we have, so I just wanted to clarify that. But everything else, I'm 100% Joe, everything you said is correct as far as I'm concerned. So from our perspective, I would totally agree that we're working very closely together. We've got a detailed programme on how we're going to implement the elements that are not yet sorted, i.e. opening or getting 2B, which is the link between north and south, and the Stony Lane area and the Harestock Road junction to the north. So we've got a detailed programme. We are working through in accordance with our Section 106 obligations to deliver by the 650th unit occupation. So that's what we're working to. We have regular meetings with Jo and her team, and with Winchester City Council as well. So it's all good stuff. Regular meetings to make sure that we're all up to date. We all know what's going on. Jo, probably like me, doesn't get involved in all the detail. We have engineers that do all of that, but we have an overseeing role and make sure that things are happening in the timescales that we're working to. So again, all very positive stuff. So other than that, haven't really got much else to say, unless anybody's got any questions for me or Jo. So
okay. Right, let's open it up to questions from members. So members, have we got any questions? I mean, they know I will ask a question if they don't. So Councillor Porter, thank you. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, I put on my little yellow hand, but I don't think you can necessarily see it. Thank you very much, and that was really encouraging, Jo. My question is, and question lots of people say is there going to be any change to the roundabout? I mean, I don't know if that's you answer that or Ian answers that, because I know that was a subject of contention earlier on. So I think everybody would like to know what's going to happen to the roundabout. And the other thing was that in the triggers, and I've raised this before, there's a little bit of a problem with around the area around the school, and I couldn't understand the trigger of 410. I wondered if somebody can explain that one to me, please, what it actually means, because I know that we've had a lot of concern about the access around the school. Thank you.
I think Ian's decided that's a question for Jo.
Well,
No, not at all. Not at all. So just getting my latte delivered. That's all. So
yes.
Not from Mrs. Curry, not from not from outside. Joe, I'm happy to answer, or I mean, what I would say was that yes, there's some realignment of the roundabout.
Right,
so
okay.
it's not a whole scale change per se. It's just a realignment of some curbs and the roundabout itself. So it doesn't, we're talking about tweaks to the roundabout.
Okay.
So nothing to be concerned about there. Would Joe, are you happy to?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Yeah, there's going to be minimal tweaks to the roundabout on the ground, just to alleviate some of the concerns that were raised by an independent safety auditor. So it is very minimal with regards to what's actually being tweaked, but it addresses those comments nicely. So.
Okay, thank you.
And Jackie, you had another question. I wasn't quite sure.
So there's I have raised it, Joe, before, but I don't understand 410 in our list, which is, and I will read it. I hope I can find it. Gone there. Out earlier. I'll come back to it when I come back to your subject. But it was basically about the trigger for the work on the public areas around providing access to the school, and I couldn't quite understand it. I've just realised mine's printed off and not printed that page. I have to get the page up again.
Councillor, I think it was in relation to
yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So it's construct permanent school access and pay. I'm not worried about the secondary education contribution at this point in time, because that's a very, very different. And it says prior to the occupation of 250th unit, and it's got part completed, trigger for permanent access provision varied in 2022. And then it's got a description saying not to occupy any part of the development within phase 2B unless the permanent access to primary schools being constructed. Is that because the access to the primary school will be constructed as part of the commercial area?
Well, isn't the permanent access already constructed?
Well, that's why I don't understand what it's really.
Yeah. So I think that was for the prior to the occupation of the 250th unit, but that's happened, and the permanent access to the school is there. Otherwise, so that route is still access to the school. It's not that. Yeah, what will happen is that when 2B gets constructed, it will end up, I'm drawing in the air here, but it will end up being a bit of a loop round. So you then come, and then you can go back onto Winchester Avenue. But the road that goes up to the school will still be a road that goes up to the school.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. That's really helpful.
So it's not that, but there will be some additional roads coming in to allow you to go from the school out directly onto Winchester Avenue.
So you won't have to do a 3-point turn like you do.
Correct.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we've got Councillor Warwick, followed by Councillor Morris. So Councillor Warwick.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And this is probably a question for Joe, and I sort of know the answer, but it might be worth asking it anyway. We've recently adopted local transport plan 4 at the County Council, which is more of a focus on sustainable transport. This site was given permission back in 2012, I think, as the Chairman mentioned. Would we be building then to local transport plan 2 or 3 or whatever it was at that time? And would anything change now in light of adopting LTP4, or do you build out, are there likely to be changes in the future because of that planning policy change around transport? Thank you.
So, Councillor, the LTP4 won't be retrospectively applied back to developments which have already secured planning. It will be used as a guide for securing new development and agreeing schemes and widths of cycleways and requirements for new planning developments. So essentially, the requirements that have been secured through the reserve matters is what will be entered into onto the Section 38 agreements and the 278 agreements. That said, since the Section 38, the spine road, as we've adopted the Mining for Streets approach rather than DMRB approach to how the spine road is functioning, there will be a period of monitoring of the performance of the spine road as an entirety once it's open to the public, that has takes into account quality audits that will look at sort of walking and cycling and the use of the roads. So there won't ever be a sort of a wholehearted redesign of anything that's been sort of secured, but there is potential for, if there's certain issues that are raised through that audit process, there might be minor amendments to address issues, but there wouldn't be wholehearted sort of changes. We are obliged to enter into the agreement as per the planning permission with the developer.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman.
And no, thank you for making that a very public discussion. That's helpful. Councillor Morris.
Yes. When the new Andover Road link is made, does that mean it's be automatically adopted by the Hampshire Highways Authority, or is there a further process by which it becomes adopted?
Thank you, Councillor. That's a really good question. So the roads, as I sort of alluded to earlier, the spine road gets joined up through several agreements. There's two Section 278 agreements at the ends of the process, and there's several Section 38 agreements in the middle of the process, or the middle of the spine road. The Section 38's agreements basically run on a process where there's no highway rights established until the road is substantially complete and open to the public, but the road would be maintainable by the developer until the end of the maintenance period. So in this instance, the road would be substantially complete and the traffic would be running on the new alignment. A certificate well, I won't go into too much detail because it can get again quite into the nitty-gritty, but a certificate will be issued then that basically says it's substantially complete. There would then be this monitoring period where there's a period to allow for tweaks to anything, and then a formal maintenance period. And it's not until the end of that maintenance period, which is at least 12 months, or at least until the substantial construction traffic has stopped running on the road, a certificate would be issued that would then make it highway maintainable at public expense. So hopefully it could be several years down the line after opening, depending on the route of the construction traffic and any agreements between Carla and Hampshire as the Highways Authority.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Morris, if you'd like to take your hand down. I think next up we've got Councillor Batho.
Thank you and good evening. I'd just like to ask, there are obviously two accesses still to be created onto the existing Andover Road, in the north at Harestock and at the south at Stony Lane. Just wondering, in terms of the impact on residents or the users of that road, whether there be a sequencing of that, which is likely to be done first, and what's the sort of timescales you're anticipating for that work to be being completed? Thank you.
I see Ian's dived in. He's looked. He thought that's a question for me. Unless Joe wants to.
Well, it's probably a combined question.
Yeah.
And maybe Joe can chip in. The road it's really quite complicated. I think that's the understatement of the year. And you can't open one end without opening the other. because otherwise all the traffic will come in and then it's got nowhere to go. You need to have both ends suitable for that quantity of traffic. So the process will be that, and it is a complex process, but it would be, Joe, correct me if you think I'm talking rubbish here, but in effect, it's an overnight thing that one day you'll be driving down the Andover Road, the next day you'll be coming through the site, and there will be a bit of temporary works going on at either end whilst that traffic's diverted to then block up the Andover Road. In effect, that's very simplistic, and the timescales. So the timescales, I think that was the other part of the question. The timescales that we're working to is to try and put dates on it. It's quite dangerous, but I'm going to suggest that, and this is heavily caveated because there is a process to go through, and we're working with Jo and her team very closely to make sure that we get all our ducks in a row. This isn't an everyday occurrence. Everybody, this is a complex process, but we're looking to have the road open, the spine road open, which by default means the Andover Road closed, very early in 2026. So at the moment we're saying January 2026, but I will say that's caveated with, you know, the process. There is a legal process, there's lots of other processes involved in that, but we are starting early enough, we're engaged early enough, so we're hopeful that all the ducks will be in the correct order. That's the bad analogy, but you know what I mean. To make sure that happens. So that's why we're working closely with Jo and her team. So is that, Jo, you got anything to add to that?
No, it's exactly right what Ian said. You can't do one without the other, so they both need to come forward together. So how that works is physically planned on the ground to minimise the disruption to the public will obviously be considered very closely by Ian, their contractors, and our team that agree the road space permits. They will be, they sit independently from us and the developers, and they are very much concerned about how the traffic will be impacted, ensuring that the everything runs smoothly, and that the disruption is to the travelling public is a minimum.
Councillor Batho, have you got a follow up?
Yeah, just a supplementary then. Obviously, if you're talking about the road opening around about January 26, when do you think you'll be coming forward to have a plan which could be communicated to the residents and the public about how the work will be undertaken and what the impact will be in terms of the actual opening up of the Hairstock and the Stony Lone ends of the Andover Road or Winchester Avenue? Just working back from the date of the January 26th, or 2026, when given that there'll need to be some conversation about that, when do you anticipate coming forward with a plan for that work to be then communicated to the public?
Well, I think it would be fair to say that we're already working on that plan now. The temporary works element to that, the traffic management, traffic regulation orders, all that sort of thing, we're already engaging with Jo's team. So the all I can say at this stage, I couldn't really give a date on that, but it will be in good time. It won't be, when I say an overnight thing, it's not like people won't know about it. That will be heavily communicated to all, so they'll know the process, as in this week, next week, it will be happening in 3 months' time, happening in 2 months' time, happening in a month's time, going to happen next week, happen tomorrow, that sort of thing. So the signage, the flyers, Facebook, whatever social process that we go through, what media we put it on, everybody will be aware. So, and we'll be led to a certain degree by Hampshire County Council, because I'm sure they've got processes, but we'll also be wanting to let our residents know as well in good time. So there is a process that we will be following closely.
Okay. I've got a couple more. I think James, if you could take your hand down. I think I've got Councillor Cunningham who's got a question, and I've got one I want to just interject on here, which is, Joe, you were describing the sort of, that you've got, if you like, designs agreed. In fact, this is probably a question for both of you, Ian. So please do join us back in the room, as it were. If I, as a member of this committee or a councillor, wanted to sort of see the plans, how would I get to see it? And then the related question is, how would the public get to see it? And then there's a second related question to that, which is, well, why do I want to see it? Which is, I want to see it to check that it's all right, and with the public might say, well, I want to be able to influence this. What is this an influenceable thing in terms of how it manifests itself to the public, or is this? And I'm trying to find the right words here. A kind of, well, you got to trust us, and I'm really looking at Joe here to say, it's so complicated, so technical, that you guys really do just have to trust us, because you don't want to get into this level of detail. Could you just help me out on that question? I hope I haven't stolen Patrick's thunder there.
But Joe, do you want to? I've got a view on this, but Joe.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, looking at the 278s and 38s, the planning process is the time for the public consultation and the input and the feedback and influencing. Then, very much with 278, 38 legislation in cap on, we then really need to be entering into agreements that reflect the what's been approved at planning. With I suppose the only exception is then through any items that are thrown up that weren't picked up in planning, such as the safety related items through road safety audits and the auditing, and then that can be assessed through the normal ways of whether it needs to be minor amendments and non-material amendments at planning. So that's with my hat on, and then with regards to how to view the plans, I suppose, I don't know, Ian, if you want to pick up on that, but technically they could be FOI'd, and provided we had to seek advice internally on what the extent of the FOI, because internally we got different legal advice from two different legal teams, but technically they could be provided to members of the public through the freedom of information request, but there wouldn't be a mechanism for feedback through that process. It would just be for information of whatever we hold on record at that time.
Okay. Ian, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, only that I think it's the drawings are very technical. It goes through ultimately 4 road safety audits through the design process. I can't see why people would be particularly interested in it. I do understand if you're a technical person, but the analogy I would use is that I drive through the M25 junction 10 every day. I don't write to the highways agency and said, oh, could I have a look at your drawings so I can just check them, or just have a look to see if I got any comments. It isn't in my remit. It's a public highway that we're dealing with the appropriate authority, Hampshire County Council Highways, to do their job in assessing it, road safety audits, technically challenging everything that we do, making sure it complies. We have criteria. It is ultimately the highway authority that need to be satisfied, and they have there are independent road safety auditors. So it's not Hampshire that are doing that. It's not us that are doing that. It's independent, professionally qualified road safety auditors. So what a member of the public can bring to that, I'm not sure. So so that would be my view. Yeah.
Okay, I hear you on that, and there's always a dilemma there, but I think it probably depends on what we think is in scope, because there are things like positions of bus stops, positions of places where you can cross the swales and so on, which I would assume are all part of this, the complexity in the design, where given that this is all happening literally where people live, there may be a view that some, if you like, feedback, that if that feedback was sought and managed in the right way, it could be helpful. At the same time, I take your point about the deeply technical sides of highways and so on, where we there are experts who know how to do that. There are experts who know how to, from a road or highway authority, and then there are experts who build this stuff. So
could I just come back to you on a couple of things there? One is,
sure.
if we need to remind ourselves that the roads are actually in, the junction either end, particularly in the northern junction, doesn't particularly affect residents per se, because there aren't any residents there. I mean, there's existing residents on Andover Road, but they always knew that the road was going to close. There's no influence they can have over that, because that's a public highway. So it's a difficult one to, if you're talking about people might have comments, excuse my slight flippancy, but if Mrs. Miggins in number 43 sees there's a tactile crossing outside her house and didn't want it, and then made a comment and said, can we move it, and then we move it in front of Mr. Jones in house number 44, he could say, well, I don't want it, but actually the crossing needs to go where the crossing needs to go, because it's the safest place for it to be, because it's been through 4 road safety audits. That's the, it's not, we don't just, at a whim decide to put a crossing there and there. There's a process, there's a planning process first of all, there's a technical approval process, there's a road safety audit process, emphasis on the safety. So what Mrs. Miggins in number 43 thinks, oh, I don't like that, isn't really going to influence whether it's safe or not. So no, I get it. That's the difficulty. It's
I hear you. But I think we also need to be sensitive to the fact that this is all happening, right in the midst of where people live in their homes. So they will want to know the details, and it's how do they get it? And I wasn't thinking of FOIs. I was thinking, is there something where people can just go and see?
Chair, I would say one thing, and I kind of alluded to it earlier about the period of monitoring and using the Manual for Streets methodology. So there is a sort of a feedback loop in that, that some of the audits that will be undertaken, they will be undertaken once it's open. So that would be observing people's behaviours, and items like people not crossing at the crossing points and that kind of thing would potentially be picked up through that process, and looking at how pedestrians and cyclists are moving along the site, as well as the safety audits. So there is, walking audits, cycling audits. There's a package of other audits as well as the road safety audits that is potentially that feedback loop that you were talking about, how people are actually using it, I suppose Ian would have to comment about having plans more publicly open that aren't through the FOI. Perhaps once the agreements are completed, that might be a milestone at which we the plans are more readily accessible. But I would highlight as well that some these types of plans that we are discussing and agreeing are technical plans, not planning plans. So they can be difficult to read or understand or interpret if you're not used to looking at them.
No, I hear you. It's been very helpful hearing you both describe that difference in where we are in the process, and we need to approach this with a different head on to what we would with a planning app. Okay, I've jumped in and delayed Patrick, Councillor Cunningham, from getting his question in. So, Councillor Cunningham, would you like to jump in and fire away?
Thank you, Chair, at last, yes. I think I've forgotten what I was going to ask by now, but yes, I have. The Ian and Joe double act. I've got a question for the two of you. Can you tell me, once the Andover Road is closed and the traffic is diverted through into Winchester Avenue, what is the proposal as far as the actual treatment of the surface of that road is concerned, the landscaping, and what do you envisage as the traffic or going through there from that point onwards?
Is that Andover Road you're talking about?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, there's a as part of the planning, we put something forward, and which was approved, which is basically trying to, I was going to use the term rewild it, but it's not quite like that. It's narrowing the carriageway down so it becomes a cycleway, footway, and a low-key access to the residents down on Andover Road. So almost like driveway width for people to get to their drives, accessing via Manley Road, and on the other end through the Stony Lane junction. So the idea is that it gets narrowed, a bit more greenery, some tree planting, bollards, cycleway, that sort of thing. I think does that sort of make it clear?
Well, I was more or less thinking in terms of the ability for it to take, say, ambulances and traffic, say, police cars, etc., emergency vehicles traveling through, fire brigades and so on and so forth.
Yes.
To avoid the congestion on the Winchester Avenue.
No, it won't be a thoroughfare. It will be accessed via Manley Road or Stony Lane, but it won't be a thoroughfare all the way through. That's not what it's designed to do. So if an ambulance needed to get to one of the houses on Andover Road north of the school, then they would go through Manley Road and get onto Andover Road there. And if it was on the southern part, they'd go through the Stony Lane junction and get on the Andover Road there to access the houses. So there will be emergency access. That's correct, but it's not a thoroughfare.
So what about traffic, emergency vehicles travelling from Winchester to the A34?
So they go through the new Winchester Avenue through the Carla Home site. So that's the main road through. Okay. The Andover Road is being closed. So it's not.
Yes, I know it is being closed, but I thought it might be an opportunity to actually make a special exception for emergency vehicles. It would make sense. Ian, what I'm saying is it would make sense, wouldn't it?
Why? Because it would go through the site, wouldn't it? It would go through the King's Barton. So
why would they go through King's Barton if there's an alternative available?
Well,
what I'm saying is it would be an idea to make that alternative available.
Well, that's not what's consented. So I take your question, but I'm not sure that's something that is appropriate or viable, but I'll take it away and have a look. So
okay, thank you very much anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Right, I've got 3 questions lined up. I've got Mike Slynn. I know that you've got a whole load of questions on this, so if you could keep it to brief, just to 1 or with 1 maximum supplementary, and similarly Jane and Martin. So starting with Mike, please.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, can you?
You're in.
Good.
We can hear you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joe and Ian, for your comments. Obviously, residents are very concerned. Yes, we would like to know, as Chair, you've raised, whether we will be allowed to see the road safety audit, whether we'll be allowed to see the details of what will be built. And I'm not going through all the issues that the residents both in Kings Barton and elsewhere feel, but let me just ask a question about the Highbury County Council's position, because as I understand it, they want to keep Andover Road open for buses. So could you tell us about your plans to do that and how they relate to what you are now giving approval to? Thank you.
I can only apologise. I do not sit in the area that deals with that. I'm under a different directorate, so I can't comment. I've got any involvement on that project, or if there is even a project, I wouldn't be able to comment. So apologies.
Well, okay, if I may just say that I understand that the County Council and Carla have reached agreement that Andover Road can be kept open for buses. So I would like, that is what I've seen written in a letter from Councillor Humby. So I would like, if you can't answer that, then
the case. If that is the case, I'm not aware of that. My understanding that is that the position is that, you know, there's no current planning permission for that, and it was decided that a new planning permission would need to be submitted by somebody, and Hampshire, to my knowledge, haven't made a commitment to do any plan to keep Andover Road open for any new schemes. I don't know what's in the pipeline, but my understanding, the current position is certainly isn't any plans for any new plan permissions.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mike, I think this falls into the category of Joe and Carla's job here is to implement the plan as per the master plan that's been approved. There may be discussions on about, you know, what might be in the future, but that would have to be brought forward, I assume, as a, you know, a plan that would require some kind of approval, and whoever's doing that has to deal with the reality of what's being put in place. I think is that how you would, is that a reasonable way of presenting it, Joe, Ian? Okay.
Yep, agree.
Excellent. Councillor Rutter.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is the safety of Winchester Avenue, and I think that it is not unreasonable to allow residents to look at the plans, the detailed plans for both the junctions and the rest of the road as is being planned, because I know there are an awful lot of concerns about the existing Winchester Avenue and the way it's been designed, and complaints that there are no proper footpaths, that the so-called side access areas are not safe for walking and cycling because so many cars use them, and there is no safe cycle routes through Winchester, through Kings Barton at the moment. So I would like to see a much bigger emphasis throughout the whole of Winchester Avenue on safe cycling, safe walking, safe crossing of the road as well, and as many crossings as possible, because that will help to slow the traffic as well. So I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for those things, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask to see the plans so that we can be confident that residents will get the sort of safe spine road, Winchester Avenue, that they deserve. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to respond? I think there was a statement of opinion rather than a question. Is that reasonable, Councillor Rutter?
Well, I think it was just a question saying, can we please see the plans, and can those plans please include safe cycling and walking?
Are you going to give me a nod, yes or no, or maybe you'll look at it?
From Carla's perspective?
Yeah, either.
We keep saying it goes through 4 road safety audits, 4, not just 1, 4. So I'm not quite sure what, and I'm happy to be corrected. I'm not trying to be difficult. My concern is that if you get lots of people making opinions on technical plans, what is the purpose? Because at the moment it's the highway authority that we need to satisfy. It isn't Mrs. Miggins in number 43, it's the highway authority. So it's the highway authority.
Mrs. Miggins in 43 doesn't have a footpath that she can walk safely along. There are serious concerns about the existing bit of Winchester Avenue that we have going through 1B and 1A. There are serious concerns, and we would like to see those concerns addressed. That's all I'm saying. It's not rocket science. I don't, you know, perhaps Joe could explain what these safety audits look at, but it certainly isn't cycling and walking as far as the resident is concerned.
So, Councillor, it's probably worth noting that there have been road safety audits, as Ian said, that have highlighted safety concerns with with various parts of the roads, including the service roads, which I think you're alluding to, and there's recommendations in there which Carla and their designers have updated the designs to address those concerns. So they will be implemented once the legal agreements are completed and the works advanced for the remainder of the spine road, which should hopefully address a lot of the concerns that the residents feel that that they feel are there. And then the further road safety audits will happen once the road is open. So again, it will then observe how the road and pedestrians, cyclists navigate the site, and so that's why there's these various safety audits. They happen at different stages. So the ones at the moment are done on the design, on the paper that is done, and that has allowed for the designs to be revised from what's on the ground at the moment. So there will be changes. I think that's probably something to highlight in. That's fair, that there are changes from what's on the ground.
Yeah, sorry, that's my design. I haven't said that. You're absolutely right. So
there are changes coming that have been agreed, yes. And then there'll be another audit once it's open to observe it. So that would hopefully address a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both of you for responding on that point. Now I'm going to be the last point on this section. I'm very aware of time. I know how important the Winchester Avenue and the highway side of it is to everyone, but it is 7:30 and we've got several other items to get through, and I've no doubt that Ian will want to move on from his latte to dinner or something, and no doubt other people will do too. So Councillor Todd, you are last up on this. I'm going to apologise to Belinda. I'm going to cut you short on this one. So Councillor Todd, you're last up on this section.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. My question is about the Northern Junction, because separate from the County Council, I was very glad that we had an earlier reference to LTP4, but since we're in the world of acronyms, something that has considerably more bite as a piece of policy is LTN 120, which is the new cycle infrastructure guidance. And the Northern Junction is not one that would be given permission today because it's so poor for cyclists, particularly coming from the north who want to access the Andover Road. So I suppose my question is there a plan? Where does the Northern Junction stand, particularly because we're not just talking about two things have changed since the design was put in place. One is the world of safety continues to move on. The second is that design guidance nationally and locally is now much more focused on making walking and cycling a pleasant and positive activity, and in particular the bit of the whole system that feels most out of date, in addition to some of the comments that Councillor Rutter made, is the Northern Junction for cyclists, particularly coming from the north. And I just wondered what the intention was with that, and whether that will be revised, if there is scope for revising that to bring it up to a modern standard.
Ian, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, as part of the design process, we again need to satisfy Hampshire County Council. So if regulations have changed, then I think it would be fair to say that they will be reminding us, if we haven't already taken it on board, to implement a number of those changes and improvements, if you want to use that word, for cycling and pedestrians. So I totally get your point. Things move on. We're now, a long time since it was first approved, that the design of from a planning perspective shows the junction. From a technical section 278 perspective, we've got to follow that junction as we've got planning approval for, but it also needs to satisfy current legislation and regulation. So I think that should pick up all those issues that you've mentioned. So
I would just add, Ian, that the design that's come through for the submission is what I would call it's enhanced from the planning position in terms of walking and cycling. I wouldn't want to say it's fully compliant with LTN 120 without going and looking in that in detail, but I would suggest that it is far more compliant than what was secured at planning, because I believe there's more opportunity there in terms of constraints that would allow it to be compliant with LTN 120, and additionally our standards basically will pick up the requirement for where there is a cycleway for it to be compliant to minimum widths, for example, which are there or thereabouts compliant with LTN 120.
Like you, I didn't want to say it was compliant yet until you guys have looked at it to then come back with us and say you need to do this, that, and the other. So there's a process, toing and froing process, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, but first glance at the design, it is it's a much enhanced walking cycling scheme than the one that was approved at planning.
Good. It looked good because it needed to be, but I'm pleased to hear that work is in process, because I hate to think that we were going to design an out-of-date junction and immediately have to start campaigning to make it work for all pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you very much.
That was helpful, and I think all these discussions have been enlightening as to how this back and forth process works and how it's different to the conversations we have at planning, but there's still room for improvements that are, can be mutually agreed. Right. I'm going to draw an end to this discussion around the roads, highways and Winchester Avenue. Want to thank you, Joe, for coming on and Ian for joining in on this session and being ready to be grilled by other members on this matter. You are well, Ian, I'm hoping you're going to stay with us to the end, but Joe, if as more likely you've got better things to do in life, you're welcome to stay, but you're welcome also to disappear. So I will leave that up to you. Next up on the agenda is still the bus update, but I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious that I said to Daniel, David, and Ed, if you're happy to stay on and have your say just in front of the City Council officers section, we will hold your input until then. But if you feel like you've got the clock ticking and your other demands in your life are asking you to be somewhere else, we could have you speak now. So David, Daniel, and Ed, put up a flare if you need to speak now so that you can disappear soon.
No flare from me, Chair.
Okay.
Nothing from me.
All right.
I'm okay to hang on.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I'm sure you were. Yeah. We'll move on to the update on the bus service that Mike Griffin Thorne has been working on for us. So, Mike, would you like to take it away? Bearing in mind time. And I don't, I know you've done a lot of prep work, and it's awful when people have done a lot of prep work. If the chairman says, "Oh, could you just get it over within 5 minutes?" But bearing in mind that, and I'm sure there will be lots of questions as well. So please, if you could update us, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So yes, I do have some slides, Chair, which I will. If your luck's in, they may not even load, but it looks like they may be successful. Can you see that?
At the moment it's a black screen, but there's here we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I apologise for that, then they've worked. So very quickly then, so just to recap on what we discussed before, several options that we explored. One of the options was and our preferred option was using Hampshire Transport Management. Would have been more cost effective, a lot quicker to turn around. Other options included going out to the wider market to see what quotes were like there, and naturally that's our long-term game is for them to pick it up and take this on as a commercial service eventually. Unfortunately, HTM it's just too big for them to be able to manage, and therefore the decision was then taken to go out to tender, and that's what we've done with 2 main options, and then there's enhancements to each of those options that we've tendered. So I'll just give you a quick look at these, and hopefully these slides can be shared. Option 1 then was what I would consider the most direct route into Winchester, and sort of serve straight down, as the map shows there, into Winchester. Option 1 within that would be running from 6 in the morning through until 9 o'clock at night. Only really requires 1 bus for the whole operation. Quite straightforward. Option 2, again, hourly service, half hourly during the peak times, both morning and afternoon, and would require 2 buses during the peak periods. And then option 3, all the exact same, but just included a Sunday service. Option 2, the main option, was a less direct route and served Bromsey Road and included the hospital. Again, much the same as the one previous. However, you know, it was naturally going to be a longer route into the hospital. And the reason we offered these 2 options was based on the survey work that we undertook a couple of months back, and that included these options. And at the time, it was felt only fair that we tender for both options to see, you know, so that we can get the cost back and be in the position that we are today to then provide that feedback and information. So the outcome of the tenders, bids range from 280,000 to 360,000 per annum. They were only received from bus and coach operators. We received nothing from minibus providers. It was solely just coach and bus. The funding that we've got needs to really support the service for at least 5 to 7 years to allow for that service to build and become more commercially viable long term. And you know, the funding that's provided here is also for the park and ride light, and doing this would probably only really see the bus service if we awarded it this current rate with the funding that we've got available now. And forgive me, I haven't got the exact figures to hand, but it would only see the service last for about 2.5 years maximum. So within this, when the operators have submitted their price, we've given them all the information we possibly can. Obviously, there isn't a service operating at the moment, so we can't give them any passenger statistics. So they will base this figure on their assumption of passenger statistics and how that would increase over time. Part of the tender return is also there was some feedback from the operators that also included things like what I've copied in here, and that's, you know, there's still an issue with driver recruitment. Retention is still an issue. There's, you know, they're seeing less people come through the doors. So this all adds to, you know, reasons why prices are higher, why demand is you know, is greater, and they just don't have the capacity to manage this. And then obviously other concerns raised, which I was expecting, were to deal with the non-spine road, so how the vehicle can access these other roads, because you know, the operators have probably looked on the map to see this and seen that the area is particularly busy with parked cars, and then introducing a bus service is always going to be problematic in the early days, just whilst people get familiar with that. And then, you know, also dealing with the spine road, how soon that would open. And I think with the spine road situation, which obviously we know now what the proposed dates for those are, it just allows for that service to be a bit more direct without having to you know, have the delays of penetrating one part of the development out onto Andover Road and then penetrating the bottom half of the development. So that would be a reason why, you know, they've raised these at the point of tender. So then the next steps from here is for Hampshire, for passenger transport, to work with the interested local bus company and also community bus providers. So community bus providers have shown an interest recently in local bus tenders, and so we're keen to engage with them. It's something that's new to them, and so this particular tender may not be something that they're interested in. You know, when we're looking at the coverage across the day, it's quite significant to what they're used to, which is quite possibly off peak, which I would consider 9:30 to 2:30, let's say. This is quite a wider scope for them, but again, you know, we're happy to engage with them and have a conversation and see what each of those parties can offer, and we'll get the proposals that, you know, that they think could work for their business. And then finally, again, I think I just need to put it out there as to be prepared that the level of service that's expected just may not be achievable and sustainable longer term. So yeah, just that's what we've got so far, and we'll continue to work to get the tender in place, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike, and for taking on board my ask to probably shorten it from what you were probably prepared for. So I'm going to open this up to members. If you, I think, Councillor Porter, you've got a question already, so you've got first dibs.
Thank you. Yes. So I realise all this is going on, and it's interesting to have the figures and the 2.5 years. And the fact that if we did wait, it would probably, the money would last a lot longer if it was going just through the spine road. I think that's really interesting. But we've also got a problem that Stagecoach, and so Stagecoach, an example, are not necessarily delivering services because of the congestion in Winchester and other reasons, and which you've cited in the paper today. So we've got a problem that it may not be a service that can be managed by one bus. If it's a service that's managed by two, what does that do to the cost? That's my first question. And the second question is, we currently have a taxi service system that operates, but it doesn't start until a bit later in the morning. Is there any chance of extending that taxi service back to 6 o'clock in the morning, which was what the residents wanted for the bus service? So the first one is, does 2 buses make it significantly more expensive? Which I know the answer is going to be yes, but how? Is it double or whatever? And will the taxi service, can the taxi service be extended and really well advertised?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer your first point, then, Councillor Porter, yeah, naturally it's going to be more. I would probably say we're looking at 2/3 more than the current figures that I've provided. And again, you know, when I engage with the operators, particularly Stagecoach, you know, I'll get them to give me a couple of suggestions, a couple of options, so that I can just see what each of them look like and see what is, you know, what is likely to be viable longer term. And that really, again, at my final sort of closing comment there was, you know, be prepared that we may not be able to achieve that, and so that's something that just need to bear in the back of our minds. And the taxi to start early, taxi share, yeah, I mean, I can certainly explore that option with the taxi company. You know, for those who don't know, the taxi share, we only pay for it when it is used. So if that, you know, we could extend it, it could be a 24-hour service. If it's only used once, we're only paying for it that one time that it's used. So that's the benefit of the taxi share. Obviously, the negative to that is it's a pre-bookable service. It needs to be done by 4 o'clock the day previous, and you know, it's not what people are looking to achieve from this. However, I think it's a good sort of interim stand-in, if we can, just for until we get the final answer on the bus. So yeah, I'm happy to explore that option.
Just if I may come back, Chairman, just the thing is the problem is, if we don't really try very hard with the taxi service, we will be sitting there with nothing really for quite some time. So I'm really keen that we at least offer something, so that if someone does have a a public transport need, they can be served by the current arrangement.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Two questions, very quick, probably very easy ones. When I was looking at the routes proposed, Route 1 seems to duplicate part of the existing bus service from Winchester to Whitchurch, the number 86. So whether there's any opportunity for that bus service, that existing service, to actually be used to go through Kings Barton. And secondly, in January 2026, when the new road is opened, will the routes be changing then? Because it seems a bit odd to establish it with these routes now and then have the routes changing again in about 2 years' time.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So, yeah, the 86 to use Kings Barton, that's not something I can really answer on. It's a commercially operated service, and therefore the local authority of Hampshire, we don't have any influence over the route that it takes. So, you know, I'm more than happy to take that away and engage with Stagecoach. I'm not sure if there is more underlying reasons as to why that's not happening, but again, you know, I'm happy to take that away and speak to Stagecoach and find out. Yes, from January 26, when the Winchester Avenue opens, the routes would change, but that would be built into the tender. So when the route changes, we will look, you know, that will get built into the tender package. Obviously, at this stage, at the point of tender, whilst we knew roughly where the dates the Winchester Avenue would open, we didn't know exact date. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Okay, right. So now I'm going to turn it over to the Winchester City Council section, where we're going to have in a minute a planning officer talk through the phase 2B process and the conditions that were set on the recreation area. But first, I'm going to ask Daniel, David, and sorry, my brain is gone. Ed, sorry, Ed. To, you know, come in, you know, I don't know how you're organised. If you could, you know, make a quick representation of what it is you want us to say, and bearing in mind that we've got an officer here who I think knows your situation and has heard about this in a Kings Barton committee meeting. So, but it's useful for all members to hear that. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll kick us off. So I'll be as fast as possible. I'm fully aware of the time.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 points concerning the 2B floodlit artificial grass pitch that have gone in for the planning application. So the first point is failure on Carla's behalf to allow for public participation of the planning process. The master plan does not call for a floodlit artificial grass pitch, only a grass recreation ground. There's a clear duty under the Planning Act for public participation. Happy to share with participants of this meeting and the community consultation boards presented by Carla as part of their public consultation. And there was no floodlit artificial grass pitch mentioned on the 5th of October 2022 at the consultation for the neighbourhood centre as part of the phase 2B, or on the 1st of February 2023 on the wider 2B planning consultation. This is a failure. This is a failure by Carla to allow for public participation. Notices were apparently put up along around the site, but you know, no residents of Manny Road saw the notices. I mean, we've got children at local schools here. We walk dogs, and we didn't see the notices. So surely that needs to be looked at as engagement with the public. So the planning deviation from the master plan only came to the attention of residents only 30 metres away from the proposed floodlit pitch, when a residents association newsletter was delivered to our front doors. So having worked on planning applications myself before, there's frequently a requirement to leaflet multiple streets away from the proposed site to ensure there's adequate public participation and awareness and fulfil your duties under the legislation. So at best, this is the duty for public participation was deficient, and at worst, it's potentially an attempt to push through the floodlit artificial grass pitch without allowing for public participation or objections. We've heard multiple times in this meeting that the master plan cannot be changed. Why is it okay with respect to the recreation ground along Manley Road and not in other aspects? The second point is, where's the requirement for an artificial grass pitch come from? Because it's not in the master plan. A floodlit artificial grass pitch, I'm sorry. Residents would like to know where the requirement for this has come from. It was not in any plans, community consultation drawings until last year. We've done our own residential survey with over 100 residents, and it's not even in the top 5 feedback from local residents about what they want that area to be. So we would like an answer from Carla in writing where the requirement has come from, because we can't work it out. And even Sport England, who've commented on this, said that the application from Carla is lacking in detail, and they don't even approve the application as it stands at the moment. So in summary, we would like like to express our regret that Carla haven't engaged with residents as they need to with respect to the grass pitch application, and we would like a response from Carla for where the requirement for the floodlit artificial grass pitch has come from that is not in the master plan.
Okay, thank you. Ed, are you leaning forward? Yeah. You want to just add a few words?
Let's run through myself and then David afterwards. I'm Ed Spooner. I'm a resident of Manley Road. Now, the delivery of the recreation ground in accordance with the master plan was a key selling factor used by Carla sales teams when selling properties in Phase 2B area of Kings Barton, especially appealing to those residents who bought houses along Manley Road. However, the plans submitted by Carla in the 2B application represent a significant deviation from the master plan, an opinion I've heard expressed by councillors also attending this meeting. As such, any consideration by Winchester City Council should be given only to plans that do not reflect a material deviation from the master plan and the local and the landscape strategy, where I believe the approval was for a natural grass pitch. Specifically, plans should not be considered that propose fenced off football pitches, propose AGP surface football pitches, or propose flood lighting. Now, I have some questions for Carla and the City Council. When and why did Carla decide to change the recreation ground design to fence off the 2 football pitches and add 3G surfaces and flood lighting? Who did Carla consult in making these design changes, and what evidence base was referenced? Has an environmental impact assessment been undertaken to inform Carla's design for the proposed facilities? Has a traffic and parking assessment been undertaken? What are the proposed measures to prevent users of the sports facilities parking on grass verges and neighbouring residential roads? Have light spill assessments and diagrams been developed, and will all such assessments be shared with residents and our councillors? And what assurances, this is more towards the planning team, what assurances as a condition of any plan considered for approval can be made to ensure Kings Barton residents benefit from open access and free of charge use of the recreation facilities for the majority of the time, especially evenings and weekends? Now, if an AGP is required in Kings Barton, this can be built in future phases. I think Dan mentioned Phase 5 in his notes, and the houses in that phase sold with that precedent. Now, finally, for the Hepburn Whaley Parish Council, Winchester City Council, as the plans for the recreation ground were passed swiftly, with a condition which now has to be discharged, the working group must be perceived as a key stakeholder with a high interest and must be kept in the loop as such, as this impacts a significant number of houses adjacent to the plot in question. Artefacts from meetings, consultations, etc. must be transparently available for additional review prior to any approval. That's our comments to you, and I'm going to pass on to David Layton.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And sorry, Daniel, I wasn't trying to send you off somewhere else without acknowledging your contribution. I was seeing this as not so much a double act, but a triple act. David,
thank you.
There's a lot of points have been raised already. Yeah, you may want to do a quick summing up.
Happy to be brief. Yeah. look, it's as I've probably said before, it's important not to lose sight of the fact that Carla sold homes on the basis of the master plan, on the basis of a commitment to a grass recreation area open to all. This is something that residents still want. Carla did not sell homes based on floodlit plastic football pitches surrounded by a 4.5 metre high fence. The real question is simply a matter of ethics and integrity. Carla's owner, Legal and General, has a code of ethics. It states, "We will always be open, honest and fair in our dealings with customers and communities and treat them with respect." Knowing the basis upon which properties were sold, the current proposals clearly mean that Carla is not meeting these standards. The proposals alone in themselves have already cost a great deal of time and distress, and this can all be avoided by honouring the original promise and sticking with the master plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Can I say each of you has, I've heard your representations in different places, and you make your points very clearly. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to invite our City Council officer to step in and talk about the process going forward from here. Now, that's not to say I'm trying to ignore a lot of your points that you were making, some of which were directed at Carla, but I think going forward, what we need to hear from is from the planning authority to describe where they're at in terms of creating a process that will involve all the relevant stakeholders, including the working group committee, so that you can have your say. There may be points that are not covered by that, but certainly all members here will have heard you very loud and clear, and will be keen to ensure that those representations are made. There may be other matters that you want to take up with Carla. We can just see how we go on this, but let's start with I think it's Rob Green. Rob Green or Ruth are going to talk about how they've dealt with phase 2B and the recreation area and the conditions and what that means going forward, and then where you're at in terms of creating a process that is fit for the consultation that will be needed. Looks like Ruth, you are putting yourself up for this.
I am. Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, I'm now the dedicated planning officer for Kings Barton. I think I've met quite a lot of you, at least virtually, already. I started at the end of November. I'm working sort of on a part-time basis, 15 hours a week, Monday to Thursday. So just to confirm that I'm now in place since the last forum meeting. Yes, so obviously we have, I attended the Kings Barton committee meeting with Rob as well. So we have heard the issues surrounding recreation ground and phase 2B previously. I think as a result of that and the comments made in relation to the application, the reserve matters was approved, but the details for that recreation ground area were pulled out to be from the approved scheme for 2B to be agreed via a condition. And I think the key aim of that really was to allow a consultation process to happen. So that's a kind of a key point to make, really. Now, if you don't mind, I'll just sort of share the screen and actually put the condition up, because it is actually quite detailed in its scope, and it has been designed to allow for a variety of different types of pitch to come forward as well, depending on the outcome of the consultation. It was specifically designed in that way. So let me just get that up there. Window. Can you see a condition there?
Yes, I can. It's a little bit
Yeah.
small on our screen. I'm just going to.
Let me see if I can make it bigger.
If you have the power to make it bigger, that would be helpful.
Can you see that bigger or not?
I can read it on my screen, but I've got a 21-inch screen.
Okay, well, I can briefly talk through it anyway, so hopefully everyone can hear. So obviously it's condition 16. Basically, we said, notwithstanding the details that were on the plans, before the occupation of any building within this phase 2B, details of the spec and the management of the sports provision must be submitted and approved by the local planning authority. So first off, no unit in this phase can be occupied before the details are agreed. So the details that need to come in are the design, spec and layout of the pitches, including surface materials, which obviously could be grass, could be 3G, details of ongoing management and maintenance, finalised position and design of the changing facilities, the toilet block, etc. Details of the running track, which was proposed around the pitches, including the surface treatment there. Finalised details of the outdoor gym, including the equipment that be within it, the height, location and spec of any surrounding fencing, positioning spec of any lighting, and if lighting is proposed, then full lighting assessments would need to be submitted, including impacts on residential amenity assessed, proposed hours of operation. So obviously we've included all the detail that we feel would be necessary to assess the proposals, and there is scope there for them to be quite wide-ranging in terms of how little or how much development is proposed on that area of the site. Now, in terms of when the facility would need to be used, it's by the occupation of the 1072nd unit, which basically ties into the occupation of the last unit in phase 2B. So basically this facility would have to be in place before the last occupation in phase 2B. And then obviously the reason is to ensure the pitch provision meets the demand for sport generated by local community and prevent unacceptable impacts on residential amenity. So that condition is obviously there in place. There is a significant amount of time before it needs to be discharged and then implemented. But the idea behind that is that obviously it would allow a consultation process to take place. Sort of bearing in mind the comments made just now from the residents. I know Carla are here, so I won't stray too much into what they might want to say in relation to that, but Carla have offered to undertake a consultation event in kind of summer of this year. I think they were talking about sort of June, July time of this year, which is obviously on the table. As officers, we're talking with all the parties at the moment. We're also talking in relation to planning policy in terms of the need for pitches, and I know they're doing a bit of an update, having a chat with a discussion with the FA at the moment, just to see what the latest position is on 3G pitches, for example, in the borough, so that we know exactly what the latest position is. So I think we, at this point, at least we have a process in place for the discharge of condition, and we'll hopefully be able to sort of update in terms of consultation by the next forum meeting. So there will be work undertaken with councillors and talking to key stakeholders in the meantime. So that's sort of where we've got to in terms of the playing pitch. Do you want to pause there, or do you want me to carry on with the other updates, Chair?
Is other updates beyond this particular recreation area?
Yes, like occupation.
I think we should pause here and invite, and if you actually, could you keep those conditions on the screen? Then I'll invite members to ask questions here, which may be informed by the representations of our speakers. Right, any members want to either ask a question for your own interest or ask a question that may enlighten, that you know the answer to, that may enlighten Daniel, David and Ed, and help answer some of their questions. I'm not seeing anybody brave enough to do that. So I've seen Jackie Porter usually can count on you to.
Chair, there's a question in the chat as well.
Okay, can you just put a hand up? Jane, if it's not a member, if you want to just put your hand up and you can ask it next after Jackie.
I'm just pointing to the fact that somebody else has put a question in the chat, Chair, that's all.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my question really is, I just wanted to bring out the fact that it says in the condition that it should be built and ready for use and transfer, knowing that a grass pitch takes quite a long time to settle in, possibly up to a year and possibly even more. How much time does Carla need to actually construct and have this ready for use in time for that number of properties that have been occupied and built? So my question really is, on the timetable, is having the event in the summer early enough to, and then possibly I say it take a couple of months to sort of take in that information, and we need to do a check on needs for this development and the recreation needs. Is that timing significantly too short or too long, or do we think we've got plenty of time to develop, build and have it ready for use?
Yeah, well, we agreed the timescales. We consulted Carla when we were drafting the condition in terms of the timescales, and they accepted this timescale. And really, I suppose it's down to their build out level and therefore the occupation level, which will largely be set by them as the developer. I think Rob and I discussed it and we thought that was reasonable, but obviously it very much depends on their development rate as well.
Can I add in that at the same time, it's very close to the new construction of the top of the Northern Junction? Does that affect the design and the construction of it?
That might be more a question for Carla, perhaps.
Okay, that's
yeah,
fine.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Jackie, I'm going to ask the question which Jane referred me to, which has come from Daniel, who was the first speaker, Ruth, and I think that thought was crossing my mind, but he's worded it very well. So the question is, why is there an allowance for a change in the master plan with respect to the 2B recreation area in this instance, when there is not an allowance to do so on other matters? Have you got that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's a good question. What I would say is that the master plan is part of the outline planning permission, which sets broad parameters and a strategy for the whole site. The reserve matters, which was what was just submitted and granted for 2B, is basically the detail for that area of the site. Now, as part of any reserve matters, you're basically making the actual detailed plans of what will actually be built. There's always a few changes and deviations from the main consent. And that's why, because big schemes like this, you can't design it all at the start because it's such a lot of work. That's why you have reserve matters consents. Now, the question of how much deviation is allowable, we need to sort of look on a basis of fact and degree, depending on the justification for it. And also the degree of change. So I suppose it is a question whether or not a 3G pitch here would be a departure from what was granted at outline. And that is one that we need to balance as planning officers, also taking into account any residential amenity impacts, for example. Does that make sense? So I would say we need to, this sort of changes always will occur as more detail comes forward. Whether or not this is a change which fits in with the outline scheme, we'd need to assess as officers on balance, given what's submitted at any one time.
So, Ruth, if you will permit me to, I'm just going to see who's just joined. I think that's Viv has just opened up this. I'm going to just build on what you said there in terms of, I think, the point that Daniel is getting to here is that we heard in respect to other matters that Carla have permission to build to their master plan, and neither the City Council nor the County Council has the power to insist on changes that Carla do not want to agree to. You know, I'm putting it quite bluntly. So a City Council as its planning authority and the County Council cannot just insist on changes. There might be tweaks that are mutually agreeable. And when it comes to looking at a planning application, a reserved matters application, in simple terms, the way I understand it is the planning authority looks at it and says, is this in line with what's in the master plan? And where there are little variations, is this a material difference? If it's not a material difference, you have the powers to go ahead and work through the details with the developer. If there is a material difference to what's in the master plan, that's when we get a situation like this, and I think that is the case here. There is a material difference in terms of what was proposed to what was in the master plan, and in those circumstances, it's like treating it. You're sort of treating it like a variation on a planning application, and you're sort of saying, okay, we can't approve it because it's not consistent with the planning app, but the outline planning app that you've already got approval for, but we can take it through a process which goes through the consultation needed, looks at all the implications, whether that's environmental, whether that is traffic and highways, and many other things which you guys know inside out what those things are, and the applicant would have to provide the reports, provide the information. They'd have to look at who's going to look after this and all that sort of thing. And then as a result of that process, there's a process that goes through, and the public get to have their comments and so on. And then it goes into a planning decision, which if there's more than 6 people objecting, would go to a planning committee. Is that basically, have I got that about right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, right. So,
yes. But obviously, before we even get to that point, I think what we're saying is it's clear that a consultation period needs to happen. Yeah. To actually see if that deviation is even something that is the conclusion of that process or not. I don't know if Viv wants to jump in, perhaps.
Right.
At this point.
Before Viv jumps in, I'm just going to give where is Daniel? Because I think this is, I don't want us to be handling the whole planning application process here, but I would like Daniel, David and Ed to feel like we have listened carefully. Well, not just feel, but to know that we have listened carefully and we're answering some of these tricky questions. So Daniel, I hope you're still with us. Are you able to just come online, and did you get that distinction that we're talking about there?
Yeah, I did. It's more a concern that Carla have an opportunity to had that consultation all the way through phase 2B already, and they failed to do so. And then they pushed through the drawings and the planning application last minute. And it just seems slightly disingenuous that we keep hearing again and again that the master plan has been approved, Secretary of State's approved, it can't be changed, it's fixed. And then suddenly, it can be changed when Carla wants to do it. And it doesn't seem to be a equitable process for allowing anyone to and residents to have their voices heard in this situation.
Okay. Viv is on the screen, so Daniel, I'm going to throw the floor open to Viv to perhaps take on some of those points, and if you can, some of the points that were raised by David and Ed as well. Thank you, Viv.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, a lot of points there from residents, and I think I won't attempt to answer every single one of them this evening. I think we rightly owe a full response to each of the points. So what I would ask, I appreciate this is recorded today, but what I would ask if those points could be forwarded to us via email, and then we can do a full and proper response to each of the points to the residents. So that I think was my first point, rather than attempting to answer them on the hoof, so to speak, here and now. just a couple of things. Going back to Daniel's question about why is there an allowance for change? I think the example I've got is linked to some degree to something like the community centre. If there's a demand and if there's a requirement or a request from local residents to look at increasing or enhancing facilities in something like a community centre, what we had previously submitted, we obviously have Section 106 obligations which set out what we have to what we are obliged to deliver, and in the case of something like a community centre, there's a minimum square meterage that's set in that Section 106. Now we know that there are residents and wider stakeholders who want to look at how we take that forward, and that minimum area is unlikely to be what we end up delivering. We've gone through consultation on something like community centre, and that building will morph and it will change, it'll get bigger, or it'll become something different to meet the demands and needs of where we need to do. To a degree, the same was with the pitches, that there was a request to look at an enhanced provision of sports pitches in the north. I'm sure residents can appreciate that something as proposed with the 3G pitch and lighting isn't a cheap, it's not, it's a lot of money that Carla would have to put forward to deliver a facility of that nature. So there was a request for us to go away and look at how we might provide some enhanced facilities, and I think Ruth has touched on the consultation process, which we'll go through in due course. So I hope that this hasn't been blown out of significant proportion, and I hope residents don't feel we've done this underhand. There was a request to look at enhanced facilities. We looked at that. That did go back at the time of the exhibition in October. That wasn't the case. That has gone in. We will do the full consultation in May, June, July, and we'll have that full, open and proper dialogue with residents at the appropriate time to work out what's best for the wider community. And ultimately, it isn't about, I completely concur, it isn't about what Carla want. It will be about, ultimately, it'll be Winchester or Headbond-Worthy or someone else who will be taking on these open spaces and these pitches, and it's unlikely to be Carla looking after these. So the long-term management and maintenance of these pitches will be crucial to that process as well. So welcome a full and open dialogue at an appropriate time later on in the summer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Viv. I've got Councillor Batho. Would you like to come in, James?
Yes, I was just wanting to ask, in terms of that consultation, obviously things like football pitches and sort of community facilities are potentially going to be used by a wider community other than just the Kings Barton residents. What process are you going to do to make sure that there are sort of inputs from that wider community, Hairstock, Week, or even possibly further afield?
I think that my simple answer to that'll come out of the members of the council who sit on this committee, the parish council themselves, and other officers. So we'll be guided by Winchester and other stakeholders on that.
Okay, James. All right, I've lowered your hand. Oh, did you have a supplementary?
Yeah, it was just whether there's an opportunity to sort of consult more widely in terms of the needs, because obviously, even though St John will practice and coach come forward as a plan yet, there are discussions about sort of facilities that might be made available there as well. So making sure that we've got sort of an understanding of what facilities might be being made available in the general area.
Maybe I could just sort of answer that we are consulting with planning policy officers who have been reviewing that. So hopefully they will be able to input as an officer that will have a better understanding of what else will be provided elsewhere.
Okay. Just before I'm going to bring David into this, and I just got a question for you, Ruth, which is, can you share where you and other city council officers are in terms of, if you like, creating the, if you like, the framework to the consultation process, which may go to some extent to answer some of the questions that have been raised as to who's going to be consulted, when, what's going to be consulted on, all that sort of thing. And also this notion of input from, you know, in terms of strategy, in terms of the strategic need. How, what's the progress in terms of creating a process so that folks can at least see what the plan is?
Yeah, well, I personally have gone through what was consented on the site in various documents to get a better understanding myself of what actually in terms of detail was consented. We've also, as I say, have been talking to planning policy officers who basically they have created the documents that set out the need for the pitches, and they're updating that. They're talking, I think it's to the FA, to discuss the latest potential need in North Winchester area for a 3G pitch, for example. And they're also aware of other pitches coming forward on sort of nearby sites that obviously would need to be taken into account. We've obviously been discussing at the various meetings with councillors and residents as well. So we've got a good idea of what the sort of the various opinions are on the issue. The short answer is we haven't come up with a strategy yet because we are still talking to everybody and haven't quite concluded that process. Obviously, Carla have offered to undertake the consultation, but we as officers, I hope, would be able to agree the basis of the consultation with them. Obviously, Viv, I'm looking at you here just off the hoof slightly, but that was kind of the hope. That we would at least be able to discuss, you know, the amount of consultation taken, etc., which I would normally expect to happen. So yeah, we've started the process, but we haven't finished it yet. It's the short answer, if that's okay.
And if I may, Ruth, and I hate to do, I know when do you think you'll have an idea of the shape of this?
Well, definitely by the next forum meeting. I would hope within, the next month or so.
Okay.
I think, Chair, I think that's entirely reasonable, and I think it's obviously we do a lot of consultation. We have done a lot of consultation at Kings Barton, and we will continue to do so. We do it on all our sites. So I think we'll be well versed in the type of questions we need to be asking, the type of information we need to provide on the board to let people know what they're looking at. And get the right answers that we need from the wider community. So we work with Winchester, we work with the communications team as well that we have on all of these. So it will be something that I think will be as smooth as we possibly can make it on the day.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Viv. I'm going to now bring in David Layton. This is probably, I mean, I'm breaking a few rules here in bringing forward a member of the public back in, but this is such a sensitive issue. I know feelings are very strong and I don't want to, I could probably have a guess, but David, if you could keep this very brief, what would be your final remarks?
No problem. I mean, well, regrettably, in terms of some of the conversation I've just been listening to, I'm reminded of the buyer beware principle, which I would hope is not something that actually lies at the heart of Carla's value proposition, or indeed the way it operates. The actual concluding question, if you like, from me was simply a very straightforward one that should be easy to answer, which is who actually made the request for the changes or the idea of a 3G pitch or whatever to be implemented on the site.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm going to ask Viv, because I guess you would know what the origination source on that was. Are you willing to?
I can't know I can't give you the exact answer, but I know that I think Ruth alluded to there was wider conversations in the round about looking at wider policy considerations for how we might be able to provide enhanced sports facilities within Winchester, and I might have got that wrong, but clearly there's an opportunity where we were creating 2 recreation pitches to the north, that there was a clear opportunity there for a site like that to be considered. I don't think I need to say any more at this stage. We can certainly provide a more fuller answer in due course to David's question, quite happily.
That would be great. I mean, there's rumours around that it might have been Hampshire FA, and if there's a particular institution that has raised this, it would be useful to have the facts out there rather than let myths and rumour go around. So I'm not seeing any further hands up for questions. I want to thank you, Viv and Ruth, for handling that, but I especially want to thank David, Ed and Daniel for making your representations today. I know this is a very sensitive issue for you and your families, so thank you for coming in this evening, and rest assured we will be keeping very close eye on this process over the coming weeks or months. I believe there's a Kings Barton committee meeting next Monday. I will just say up front, I will not actually be able to be there myself, but I'm sure other councillors will be. Okay, with that, I think we're into the home stretch, everyone. Or the final sprint to the line. So, Ruth, do you want to update us on the other points, unless I've forgotten something?
Yeah, that's fine. So just in terms of the occupation figures, we said we would update every forum. The Council Tax Department have confirmed that 562 properties are now registered for council tax, of which 6 are currently unoccupied. That's a reasonable increase of about 41 properties since the last forum meeting.
Yep.
When I think there were 521 properties that were basically completed and occupied effectively. Yep. So obviously development continues on the site. And then in terms of the Section 106 obligation schedule, I believe at the last forum meeting, Rob put that up on the screen as an Excel document, so I'll just do the same here if that's okay. Now I do have to apologise because the version that made it into the agenda appendices, unfortunately we had to convert it into Word and it didn't work very well. So the information is in there, but unfortunately the formatting isn't great, so I apologise.
All the right words, but not necessarily in the right order.
Well, roughly in the right order, but with a lot of spaces in between and a bit too small.
Okay, so, all right. Well, we need to figure out. We do need to get this tracker more, publicly available.
Yeah, I may have to convert it to a Word doc before the next meeting. Can you see roughly? It might not be very visible. I'm sorry, it's quite a wide document, but can you see on your screen an Excel file?
I can. My screen isn't really big enough.
Yeah, apologies. We will get the formatting sorted and circulate a better version. But basically, I've gone through the document that Rob was drafting for the last forum. I've spoken with the County Council, who's provided input on the latest position from their perspective, and basically tried to update this as much as I can. I have added some more information at the bottom, just some of the basically the links to all of the original 106 agreements and variations to the 106 agreements have been added in there, and also some of the key definitions and plans have also been added. Right. Now this does come with a slight health warning. I know we have discussed this previously, Steve, in that these documents are very complicated, so please do refer to the original agreements if you want to get into the detail of things, I would say. But this is obviously just meant to be a guide of where we are at this present moment in terms of the site and its obligations.
Right.
So yes, I'm hoping if we get this circulated in a better format, then obviously people can have a good look at it before the next meeting and ask any questions and clarification that they have. But it's now been updated, so we can work from this point.
Okay. Could you just highlight the nearest few trigger points? And I'm probably more concerned about the material, tangible things rather than things related to pupil premium and so on, which are more financial, that that happen in relation to various authorities. So it's the tangible things. What are the next upcoming trigger points on here?
Well, the key ones are the 650 occupation for the diversion, obviously, of Andover Road.
Yeah.
Which is still in there. There are also various trigger points for the signing of the highways agreement for each section of the new road, which the county council officer was talking about a little earlier. And they vary from sort of 550 to 625 occupations. Now, we have just realised, obviously, that 550 has just been surpassed with the latest figures, but obviously officers have just advised from the county that those agreements are almost now in place. So hopefully those will be resolved shortly, and that will be completed. So it's for phases 1A and 1B, it's 550 occupations. For phase 2A, 575 occupations, and for phase 2B, that's now 625 occupations. There's a note on the schedule, but those triggers were pushed back by agreement with the county council.
Yeah.
So were previously lower than that. The first one used to be 450. Sorry, I don't want to get into too much detail, but I think they're the next few triggers, and then most of them are 650 or beyond.
Yeah. That
does that make sense?
Correlates with what I was understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Before we move on to the last item on the agenda, which is Carla, has any members got any questions? I know it's getting very late here, and I'm sure most will want to be elsewhere. Right, so I'm not seeing any burning questions on this. I'd like to thank you, Ruth, and Rob, I know, did a good chunk of work on this tracker. I think it would be good to have this, certainly accessible in the public domain, so that folks can actually dig into it, and certainly members can dig into it and understand what should be coming up next. So, am I forgetting? I think we've covered that off, Ruth, so thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
We are just we got the last item on the agenda, which is the Carla update. Ian or Viv, I don't know what else you had in mind to update us on. We've brought you into the conversations around the Winchester Avenue and the roads and the recreation area. There's probably other things. What else? Is there anything else you wanted to make us aware of? The archaeology dig, for example, and the and what that means for that footpath. Any other issues you feel like you want to?
Well, just very conscious of time.
Yeah.
Because it is getting late. There is nothing particular to add. I think we've got a temporary closure of the footpath, the temporary goodwill footpath, if we want to call it that goes up the side of 3 on the eastern side of
phase 2A.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's late. Okay. So we will be closing that footpath as a temporary measure next Monday due to the archaeological dig as part of our planning. That is likely to be closed between 8 and 10 weeks, and then that will then reopen, but then it will close again permanently when we start phase 3A2. So we've been looking at whether or not there's an alternative route, and we're still looking at that, ideally up the Spine Road through 2A up to the Ridge, but there might be a couple of months where that won't be possible, but we'll keep residents informed of access there. Other than that, Steve, I'm not sure we've covered the roads. We've covered some other bits and pieces, so for me, nothing more to add unless anybody's got any questions. So.
Okay. I've just got one question, which I should have asked earlier when we had Joe online, and it's a question. It really is a question for you, Ian, which is how confident are you of meeting the 650 trigger for the Winchester Avenue? And I know some things are outside of your control, but what's your confidence level?
I am reasonably confident, and the reason why I say that is that we've got really good engagement now with Hampshire. I don't want to. I appreciate Joe's not here, but it was clear that I think to everybody that we have monthly meetings. My team meet with Joe's team on a regular basis. When I say regular basis, sometimes it's twice a week. So that's how engaged we are. So we are doing everything that we can. We've got a very detailed program of how we're going to achieve this, which Hampshire have also in inverted commas signed up to, and that's what we're working to. So I'm as confident as I can be, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Ian and Viv. Unless Viv has got anything else you want to chime in with. Yeah, you're desperate to get away. Sorry, I don't mean. I mean no more than any of us, frankly. So, so if I could, I think I'm just going to wrap up now and thank. I'm trying to think who other speakers are here. I'd like to thank the public representation who are still here: David, Daniel, Ed, Mike, and Nigel. And I apologise if I've overlooked. Oh, and Belinda and Julian for if you're still here, Julian. Yes, you are. For joining us today and providing your contributions. I'm absolutely. I'm going to be fairly confident that I'm not sure we've answered all the questions from Daniel, David, and Ed. Members, I'm sure, will be aware of your concerns and will be lobbying to get an appropriate process for you. With that, I think we're going to close the meeting, and I think we can close the meeting and say thank you very much, everybody, all members, for being here so late. I apologise it's gone on, but it's been quite a heavy agenda as it turned out. So, and thanks to the officers for all the work done in preparation for this meeting.